Hello and welcome to another episode of Inside Great Minds. I am your host, Adam Outland, and we have a very special guest today for our show. That guest is Drew Day. He's a good friend, a client of over 5 years, and it's been awesome to see his business grow over that time. A little bit about Drew, and then we'll jump into what we're covering in this podcast. Drew Day is the founder and president of Basecamp Trading, an international speaker and 16-year hedge fund veteran that has been involved with various hedge funds that have raised and managed over 6.5 billion in assets. He's been involved with systematic training and portfolio management for more than 16 years, and he's focused on trading the global futures markets, allowing a systematic, low leverage, and highly diversified trading regimen. As a commodity trading advisor, he traded 40 individual futures markets across 8 different sectors. And Drew's also been a featured speaker at Bloomberg Markets in London and New York, and is featured as a leading industry expert in the book A Visual Guide to Hedge Funds, published by Bloomberg Wiley. He's also involved in proprietary trading and owns his own proprietary trading firm that focuses on quantitative, behavioral, and machine learning trading systems. He holds a BS in business administration from Union University and is finishing his graduate work in finance at Oklahoma Price College of Business. That's the bio. Drew and Basecamp Trading is going to be our focus. He's built a business that successfully doubled in revenue this last year and has been growing well over 20%, I want to say, prior to that. So he's going to speak a little bit about the growth. He's going to speak a little bit about the decision-making, again, the principles that have guided him in doubling a virtual business, teaching day traders the right concepts of how to trade. In his specific practice, he works with multiple teachers that are day traders themselves, one for futures, options, and they actually teach day trading principally, the mindset behind making certain trades. They have a trading room as a platform. They've really built this out. And under Drew's vision, they've grown their membership to well in the thousands of members that continually learn and grow through their systems and receive coaching, guidance, etc. So he's going to speak a little bit about that business, his path, the lessons learned through growing up, what drew him to trading in the market. And I think what you can listen for, besides the decision-making principles, is some of the unique things about the space of trading as well. So he's going to speak to us some of the crazy market conditions that we've seen over the months with GameStop and pump and dumps, and not a whole lot is focused on that. I kind of touch on it at the very, very end, but it still makes for a great interview, great perspective on the trading industry and the trading space. But more than anything, as usual, in Inside Great Minds, we focus on the journey of what it took to get to where he is today. So with that in mind, hope you enjoy this episode with Drew Day. So we always like to start these off and just kind of going back and remembering where we actually met and how we met. And it's actually really fun because, we've worked together for, I think, like 6 years now. I mean, it's been a long time. And I'm going back in my head and I'm like, how the hell did we get introduced? And I think it was 6th Division, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually Chase Frost from 6th Division, who's, I think, with Longship Systems now. And he's the one that made the referral. I was in Phoenix and we were just talking about some sales issues, and he referred me to Southwestern, and that's when we met. I guess it would have been about 6 years ago, maybe going on 7.
Yeah. I mean, early on, and for listeners, 6th Division was a consulting business that kind of attached to a CRM called Infusionsoft, right? So they helped consult on Infusionsoft-based systems. Hopefully I'm doing them justice if they ever listen to this. But so you were using them as a consultant, and then I think in a conversation around sales, Chase brought it up, and then you and I connected from there, right?
Right.
And then back then your company was still undergoing the transformation. It was called MicroQuant. And
Well, that's the company name, but the brand was Value Charts back then. We rebranded Value Charts to Basecamp Trading over the years.
so how many years had you been doing value charts prior to when you and I connected?
I started Value Charts. That was the first really go at doing what I do now, and which is basically teaching people how to trade the markets. I've always been in the hedge fund space, and we had a patent on this value charts analysis technique. And it was 2010 that I had this idea. It was right after the financial crisis of 2008. There was also some issues in 2010 as well. And I really saw people wanting to take control of their retirement accounts and trading for themselves. And I thought, well, I have kind of this insight and this patented tool, and I should use that to teach them how to do this themselves. There was a lack of trust in financial advisors at the time because a lot of people lost a lot of money in 2008. And so we started as Value Charts, and I've been working on this since 2010.
Yeah. So I was thinking, so you're married, you've got kiddos. How did that all fit in? Because whenever you go and say, hey, I'm going to start a new enterprise right after a huge financial downturn. Hey, honey, like where was this in relation to you? Like you're married, kids, and this decision to change, like how did this stack up in the timeline?
Yeah, good question. It actually, I started all this about 3 years before having my first child. She was born in 2013. So it's been a journey, to say the least. And definitely, I've had those long nights, those all-nighters, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in growing this company.
Was she just like totally on board though from day one, or was she like, you're crazy, like we just went through a financial apocalypse and you want to get into this space? Or was she always just like, you're brilliant, go do it, I got the home?
She comes from a family of entrepreneurs, so I don't think that it was like abnormal to her for me to pursue something. But I do, it was kind of like it was something new at the time for me because I hadn't really stepped out on my own yet. I had always kind of been, in that employee role. And so I think there's always a little bit of a fear when you decide to do that. And it was somewhat tumultuous, to say the least. And it was a big risk. And I'm very glad that I took it.
Yeah. And she is too, I think. Right. So,
I'd say so.
Yeah. So yeah, give us the, so teaching people basically day trading concepts is where Value Charts started off, was with around some key principles that you were teaching day trading, right? Am I close?
Yeah, you were very close. I had a business partner at the time that I ended up buying out, and we kind of had two different views. My view had always been one of teaching people. When I went to college, I was actually an education major. That's always been kind of a root and a theme of our kind of brand here at Basecamp Trading now. MicroQuant is the company, but education is important to me, and it's a core value that we have. And so I saw a great opportunity to really help people learn how to trade and learn how to do this for themselves. And so the business partner at the time, he actually authored the patent, and he wanted to use the patent in developing more of a trading platform, if you will. And so eventually one of the big lessons that I learned is you really can't chase after two things like that. And so we ended up parting ways, and I kept Value Charts and still own the patent to this day. But teaching people was really the core of why we exist, and why we started back in 2000. the company was formed in 2010. We really started working on it as a marketing in 2011 to get things going.
Yeah.
We were kind of a technology side, but also an education side. And so we're a very unique business, but education is really the central theme of what we focus on here at Microquant today.
So, the podcast Inside Great Minds is really about trying to peel back the onion of how the mind is formed in certain people and how the operating and decision-making principles come together collectively. Because what we see once someone's actually successful is we see the final product. Well, it's still growing. You're still developing, you're still growing, right? But we see a final product of what was a lot of trauma, challenges, trainings, stupid mistakes, right? And so we lose the ability to connect with that person and think, oh, that's a path I could take. Because everybody thinks, well, I got to be that good before I even start, right? That's how most people, I think, look at the success story. And so, in that, I kind of always like to go back to, maybe jump all the way back to what's early and just ask what like you said your wife's parents were entrepreneurs. What did your parents do? Like, how did you even what were forming thoughts in your early years that got you on this path to begin with? Or maybe you weren't on this path at all and you had to do a 180 completely.
Well, funny enough, I came from humble beginnings. My parents were actually both teachers. Okay. That's where they met. Growing up, we didn't have a lot. I observed a strong work ethic in both of my parents, but also my grandparents. And my parents ended up getting a divorce, and I was pretty much raised by my mother, who supported 3 kids. All of us, went through college, but she actually went through a bankruptcy through that divorce that was, kind of out of her control. And it was really interesting to kind of observe that and see how hard she worked. Now, my father was also a very hard worker as well. So I think that it was modeled for me at an early age to have that grit and that hard work ethic, to put your best foot forward and do your best at all times, from a very early age. So I started working when I was very young, and they really did instill within me an appreciation for hard work, and kind of what I'd consider an unmatched work ethic amongst a lot of people that I've come in contact with throughout my career.
So 3 brothers, is that right?
I'm the middle. I have an older sister and a younger brother.
Yeah. Okay. Older sister. So you're the middle in the pack. Got it.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that's a lot to go through, right? I mean, you're transitioning parents, you're transitioning, watching like a big financial, fall through with family. And so the fiscal responsibility probably played a role there where you started taking ownership of making money. I don't want to assume, I'm just imagining that was part of it for you. Getting a job early on was
well, yes and no. I mean, the other part of the story is that when I was young, kind of dumb, and I didn't really manage my money very well. And so I ended up going to a private school and taking out all these student loans and kind of putting myself in some debt. And I was kind of behind the 8 ball. So I then had to work extremely hard to graduate on time. It took 45 credit hours my senior year of college to graduate on time while working. And then when I graduated, I actually worked 3 jobs. I'd get up at 4 in the morning and work until midnight, right after graduating college. And part of that was in a hedge fund. It was kind of like a full-time job for part-time pay back then. But I think going through that, it actually kind of helped me reevaluate and just look at what my mother had done, look at what I wanted to accomplish with my life. And it really gave me a lot of motivation to really work harder, because I didn't want to live in debt. I didn't want to be enslaved to it.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. And so from there, what did you study in school again? Did you say you studied education? No.
I started as a history education major with a business minor. And when I was a sophomore, after my freshman year of college, I got an internship at a commodity fund and really kind of fell in love with the industry. And it was just a totally new world for me. I went in with the goal to actually work for the commodity fund. And the gentleman wanted me to mow his grass, and I convinced him at that time to give me an internship. And so after kind of like learning about this industry, I decided to switch my major back to business, or I switched those. My business degree, or my major became business, and my minor became history.
So wait, pause. Hold on. You were cutting lawn for a hedge fund guy.
No, I wasn't cutting the lawn. He knew my mother actually, and asked if I was coming home for the summer from school, and said that he wanted me to work for him. So I showed up to this office, and it was in Naples, Florida, my hometown. And I was wearing like the best Dockers a broke college student could afford. And I walked in with a notepad, ready to take notes. Tell me all about the hedge fund space. Tell me what you do. I had all these questions, and he just kind of looked at me like dumbfounded and was kind of like, well, I was thinking about having you like mow my grass. And so I literally at that point was like, well, I mean, I'm happy to mow your grass, but I'd really like to learn a little bit more about this industry. This is fascinating. And he said, well, let me talk to my business partner. And he did, and they decided to give me an internship. And I was 21 years old, entering the hedge fund space at a very young age, and it was that's kind of how it started.
And just knowing you, Drew, like you were a natural, it seems like you are a naturally curious human being. Like every time I talk to you, you're like, oh, I've read 7 new books that are really interesting to me, and all these new ideas. And you ask. You are always reaching out to like coaches and consultants and people with new ideas. You're always asking questions. And to hear you say that when you were a young kid in Dockers, the reason you got hired is because you were interested instead of trying to be interesting and ask a lot of questions. Where did you learn that? Like, have you just always did it get on your parents' nerves that you just ask questions all the time? Like when you were a little kid, like where did you pick that up? Or has that always just been the case?
I'm not really sure. Just kind of going back to childhood. I mean, my mother always thought I would be in business because when I was a kid, I went around the neighborhood and I got all these. I convinced all these people to pay me $10, to mow their grass, and I thought to myself, well, I have so many people's yards to mow here, and I don't have the time to do it. So I went down the street and I hired a kid to mow the grass for $5. And so I literally just, started doing that as a young age. And I've never really been, shy to ask questions. And I think I've gotten, more bold in asking questions throughout the years. But I don't know really where I picked it up. But I do think it helps you, definitely grow. By not just asking questions, but asking the right questions.
Yeah, I like that you were already handing out 1099 contract forms when you were, 7. So yeah, okay. So and then let's go. We're gonna skip around all the way to current day for a second. So we're kind of getting a whole picture. There was some hedge fund work. We'll come back to that. College education, minor in business, but kind of switched focus. There's value charts, but today you have Basecamp trading, right? And so similar to value charts, but you've developed it and grown it into its own identity, right? So what is it today that you own, and what's and that you've grown, and what's kind of different from how you started, and how would you describe what it is that you've built today?
Well, the company is the same. The company is called Microquant, and our primary website is Basecamp Trading. It used to be Value Charts, and the reason that we decided to changed the name from Value Charts to Basecamp Trading. In my own personal journey of learning to trade, I started as an intern that was basically filing, doing some compliance, then getting into the marketing side, then getting into the trading side at the end. I kind of had to learn the hard way. And so as I looked at the industry as a whole, and I looked at traders, I saw that trading can actually be a substantial challenge for a lot of people. And I looked at value charts, and I didn't author the patent for value charts. Do I think it's a valuable tool? Yes. But I didn't want to build a brand around a tool that I didn't necessarily build myself, even though I own it. I really looked at mountaineering and Mount Everest and summiting Mount Everest as one of the most challenging and exciting things to do in the world. And I thought to myself, wow, what a great way to really help people kind of like put a framework around trading. And so after multiple conversations, we decided that we should become Basecamp Trading because everyone starts at the summit, or not, sorry, at Basecamp. And then they go to summit. And so no matter how long people have been trading, whether they've been trading for 20 years or 2 years or 2 months, or they just got excited about this, most recent GME GameStop thing, or what, they're all at Basecamp. They've got to start somewhere and then start to climb. And unfortunately, a lot of traders pick up bad habits. So they may have been trading 20 years, but they've got to come back down and learn the basics to properly get all the way up that summit. And that summit may be different for different people, but we believe that the Basecamp brand has has a lot of power in really helping people kind of identify where they are in their own trading journey, much more so than value charts ever did. And so that's why we rebranded. I think that it takes a lifetime really to become excellent at trading. And what better way to use that kind of summiting Mount Everest in trading. It's kind of like a metaphor, and it has a lot of meaning to us here at Basecamp Trading. We kind of view ourselves more as like the Sherpas of helping people get up, or the mountaineer, like it's the guide that's helping our clients scale and summit their trading, whether they're trading stocks, options, or futures contracts.
Yeah, and for everybody that's a listener on here, to physically train as a Sherpa, Drew also does like 500-pound squats when he's not. When did you get it? This is total sidebar, but when did you get into like the whole like CrossFit style track, or not necessarily CrossFit, but powerlifting and all that? Because that's kind of that's become like a pastime of yours now.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really good question. It's kind of when the business started to improve is when I started to focus in on my own health and fitness as like a major priority. And I would say about 5 years ago is when I started getting into barbell training and healthier eating and all of those sorts of things. And but I do professional barbell training, and it's something I do 3 times a week, and I have been doing it for about 5 years now.
Yeah, and it's you feel like that in and of itself has kind of improved your energy and ability to focus. I feel like you brought that up to me one time. You're like, dude, you'd think you'd be totally exhausted from doing some of those repetitions that you do at the gym, but you've told me before, I swear, you said, I have more energy throughout the day without even caffeine.
Yeah, absolutely. I've lost over 50 pounds since doing barbell training. I've gotten much stronger, much healthier, but I see a direct correlation between my energy level, the ability to focus, and actually get through the challenging times in business. Because I view the going under the barbell as there's lots of life lessons you can learn when you could die underneath the barbell because you're lifting such heavy weight. And I do it every morning. I'm the first one in the gym. I turn the lights on. I get up every day around 5, and I go train for about 2 hours before I really start my day. And I would never change that because I can actually think a lot more clearly after getting that kind of workout.
Yeah, it's always impressive. And I know that was a sidebar, but it's exhausting to build a business. It is literally it's like you have literal kids, but then you also have your business, which is a baby of itself, right? And it's just
Right.
can suck the energy to like think of building a business and then be like, oh, I kind of want to break my body for a couple hours first before I go take care of this child. So it's always impressive, but you're right. I think it makes you more whole, right? It's not your whole life is the business. You have physical health and these other components too. So that's great. We're just for listeners, I know this may not exist everywhere, but what's the program, or what's the, just as like a, we can put it in the show notes if people are interested.
Oh, I do Mark Ripeto's Starting Strength program. You can find it online, Starting Strength.
Cool. Yeah. So there you go, Mark. Drew wants a 5% if any referrals come from this. But yeah, so all right, so flip back over, and we just talked about how tough it can be to start something new. Like after year one of value charts, were you just like, oh yeah, this is making tons of dough, like this is going to be great, I can see the rest of my life now building this? Or was it like, I don't know if this is what I wanted? Like tell us about, like, that first year is usually challenging, but I'm kind of curious about how you got started.
Honestly, it was the most challenging oh shit moment of my life, because not only did the company almost go bankrupt, I didn't know, having gone from being an employee to a business owner, that when you get paid, that your taxes aren't taken out of those guaranteed payments. And so I got hit with a massive tax penalty from the IRS, and I started getting these letters that they were going to seize my assets and take my home. And that was kind of a nice little wake-up call back then. And I was able to survive and get through it, but I was like sitting there going, how in the world am I going to pay this amount of money that I owe in taxes on the one hand? On the other hand, there were some decisions that were made in the company that, I don't necessarily, looking back on it, it was a challenging season. And like I said, the company almost did not make it. I can recall one time we had a payroll that was about a 6-figure payroll, and it was due in a week. And we had $25,000 in the bank.
Oh.
And so we were insolvent basically. And we figured out a way to overcome that, make payroll, and turn the company around. Those were two major obstacles, but it got worse actually. That's one of the things in business ownership, and at least in my experience, is that sometimes things seem really, really bad, and then they seem really even worse. And so, I found my business actually in some turmoil and in a litigious situation, which is probably the most challenging thing that I've ever been through. So when you find yourself in, the legal system and you've never been there before, it really makes you grow up quickly and question a lot, and you learn a lot in those dark times.
Man, you've kind of watched, even, knowing each other as long as you've kind of seen what we've gone through. Tina, with her field hockey business, my wife, I think we've talked about this before. We bought a warehouse that we turned into a facility, and well, it's a totally different animal. Like, you're working with contractors. You've never had to deal with that before. You're working with a GM, you're working with legal counsel on what is legal code, what's not. And then you get city approvals, and it's just trial by complete fire. No one can prepare you for what's about to happen, So just from that, I can totally relate to. So how do you cope with these things? Did you just kind of surround yourself with good advisors and good investors? Did you just read books, countless books during that time period to educate yourself? Like, how did you work through some of that stuff?
Looking back on it, I actually had some very good business partners and had phenomenal legal counsel. And, I'd say, there was, this, when you go through that, it's not like it's something that ends quickly. It's actually something that drags on for years sometimes. And so you have to you have to sit there and realize, like for me, the lesson that I learned is when you hit these obstacles, especially if you find yourself in an unfortunate legal situation, the tendency is that you want to escape the pain quickly, and it doesn't work that way. So you have to actually grow through the pain. And looking back on it, I learned some of the best and most valuable lessons by taking it one day at a time. And I think that would be if I were to go back and give myself advice back before going through all that kind of stuff, I probably would have said to just relax a little bit, because these situations, these obstacles make you stronger. Even if I had lost in some of those situations, which I didn't, but it still would have been valuable lessons for me and the business. And so, I would say that some of the greatest advice that I was given was from my strong legal team. So if you're a business owner or thinking about being a business owner and you don't have a strong, corporate attorney, you definitely need one. And, I had that, and it was valuable to have, but the business doesn't stop when you're going through all that stuff. So a lot of the day-to-day things that you still have to deal with, like the fires don't put themselves out, and you can't be so focused in on the legal situation that you ignore the rest of your business. And so I had to learn to kind of compartmentalize to a degree and realize that this is going to take a while, and just give it to the attorney and try to take the emotions out of it. I'll be really transparent with you. The emotional side of it was the hardest part for me, because I've never been in that situation before, never wanted to find myself in that kind of situation.
Right.
And it was something that you just couldn't escape from. But over time, I learned how to just kind of put it over here as something I'm dealing with, not let it take over my life.
Yeah. And it you kind of toughen up a little bit from the experience. And there's always this quote I put on my vision board. What you just said makes me think about it. It's from up here, the mountains look like molehills. And it's like, in the moment, you feel like you're climbing this insurmountable mountain. Like, back to your Everest analogy, it's like, holy shit, I don't know if I need an oxygen mask and all the help I can get. And then you climb that, and then like 5 years later, your business has grown. You're dealing with even other insane things that are bigger in nature, maybe even more expensive. And you look back and you're like, well, that was cute, and not to diminish, because what you dealt with there was probably some of the most challenging stuff you'll handle, but it does kind of prepare you for the future. And at the same time, you probably look back and at some of these things, like you said, just relax, like it's going to be okay. It's not maybe as quite as big of a mountain as maybe you're making it out to be, right?
Yeah, and it's also 100%, and it's also kind of given me, I think, a different lens at which to view people and situations, and it's given me better filters for identifying red flags faster. It's also helped me identify what risk to take, and I have no problem with taking massive risk. I want to fail fast so that I can improve. And I'm actually 100% willing to, to fail very, very quickly. And I don't want to fail, but I didn't have some of those filters. I didn't have some of that, going into this. And I think it's really helped because I think it's kind of shown me what to look out for along the way on the path.
Yeah. And that pays dividends, sometimes more than you actually get paid in the pocket. Those first couple of years of business, you're getting paid in knowledge and experience that will hopefully be made up later. And it has. I mean, can we talk just revenue dollars? Is that okay? Just from these last couple of years? I mean, it's just been incredible, right? Let's go back. So 2019, you were, or 2018, 2019, roughly, what was your business producing in revenue?
A couple million a year.
Yeah.
And now, we're on track to do, probably over 10 in a year.
Yeah. So 2019 to 2020, what was the jump roughly?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big one. But I think the jump came from the strategic, there's two things that I would attribute that to. Number one, We study everything. I don't just study my industry, I study other entrepreneurs, and I see what they do because I think that success leaves clues. And so I look at some of the things that other entrepreneurs that are very successful are doing and the impact it has on, their companies. We definitely study our industry, but we also study other entrepreneurs, or at least I do anyways. And I think that's tremendous. The other thing, which is somewhat proprietary, but we've made a lot of strategic decisions that have really helped us accelerate what we're doing in a way that I think pulls us way ahead of our competition.
Can I contribute one thought, and you can tell me if I'm wrong?
Sure.
I think you've become one of the most data-driven decision makers that I've ever worked with. Like in particular, you look at like the last 3 or maybe 4 years, but particularly the last 3 years, like the level to which you've dissected, separated, organized, and coordinated data, and then the way you do your traction EOS meetings with your team to dig through it and then make data-driven decisions. Like, I don't know, maybe that didn't contribute, but I think that from my perspective was probably a big, that all the little changes started to just snowball, right? I mean, do you feel like that's somewhat true for you guys, the data decision-making process?
Yeah. I mean, data is so important, and we want to be as data-driven as possible. I'm still in the process of refining our processes with how we use data to make better decisions. But I do know that data is king, and the more you can know and own your data, the more clarity you have on where your business and control you have on where your business is going. At least in my space specifically, if you don't know your numbers, you're really flying, blindly. And I'd say we implemented the EOS processes in 2015, and we really did take, to your point, in 2018, we made a major overhaul on how we used our data inside of the business and started making decisions based on that data. And it's not perfect. I don't know if the nature of data or quantitative analysis is just the very nature of it. It's something that you have to do over and over again and refine. And so we are constantly looking at ways to use data to give us insights. And so the biggest thing that I am doing right now currently is looking at that data to look for trends in the overall business, and then identify those trends and then make decisions based off of improving those trends. And if there's a decline, then I can identify a decline in revenue or decline in a sales pipeline because of the data that we have.
Yeah. I mean, and you're tracking, where do the leads come from? What's the conversion on those leads? How's our close rate from different, funnels that we have? You're looking at retention numbers and what you can do to improve. Like you have, and that's difficult. Like it's difficult with all the systems to actually, it's not hard to just capture numbers and data. What's really hard to do is read them correctly and organize and extract them the right way, right? And it's taking time, but you guys have really done some amazing things with that to help your decision making. So kind of coming back to the shitstorm, the first couple of years of the business, and out of that came an incredible company. Like, when did you so how many team members do you have? Like, when did you start hiring, and did you always work with the guy behind the scenes with operations? Were you doing everything in the beginning? Like, how did the team itself scale?
Well, I've been working with some of the staff now. We're 10 people. We are almost exclusively virtual, but we do have an office in Southlake, Texas, that we're building. And I would say that one of the our head developer is Brian Strong. I've been working with Brian since 2009. And most of the staff members, they've been with us a long time. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing. I've made every mistake imaginable. I was doing it all, and I was thinking that by working so much and controlling so much that I was moving the business forward. And in reality, I was diminishing, what I call my hourly rate for my income producing activities. And when I started to really track the time on what I was working on, I literally would come into my office and file paperwork because that's what I started doing. And it does nothing to grow the success of the business. It's important, but it's not an income producing activity. And so what I learned over time was to I started promoting from within, and I started delegating. And I learned very quickly my management style is one of, I think that we as a team, I have a leadership team, and our team collectively makes the best decisions. I mean, I might have an idea that I want to do, and so I'll put it in front of the team, we'll discuss it, we'll make a decision together. And I've had to get comfortable letting team members that have been promoted own decisions that maybe I might not make. But if they're going to truly have authority and they're going to truly own and be accountable to their role, then I've got to let go. And by letting go in a lot of these areas, I think the company's actually scaled, and it's given me more time to work on the business, not in the business. And that transition is something that I started working on about 3 years ago. And it's been a great one. And I think the business has grown exponentially because of it, because I've let go of so many things that I didn't want to let go of, that quite frankly were holding the business back. And I want to put all of my people in their positions of strength. And quite frankly, there's people that do a better job of things that I was doing than me. So, but I was somewhat insecure at the time. I let go of some of those things, but I had to trust it. And it's been a process, and I've gotten better at it. And I'm very comfortable delegating today.
Yeah, that was super well said. I mean, it's in my line of work, you see the ceilings that people hit all the time because it's part of my job working with folks. And that ceiling often is time, right? And the breakthrough is the moment they actually delegate and feel comfortable empowering other people. And you just have an incredible retention with your people. And they do all feel like they have a seat at the table, and they do literally, I mean, a number of them, right? So yeah, Brian's worked with you forever. And so all of that speaks to the culture you've created. And one thing I think is kind of neat, I've noticed in your space a little bit that some people will name the business after themselves, right? It's the Drew Day Show, right? Which has a nice ring to it, by the way, but the Drew Day Show. But and some of those businesses do really scale. Like you look in real estate, Keller Williams is named after, right? Gary Keller and his partner at the time. And it's grown really well. But I feel like there's a limitation when it's your name. It doesn't give people as much freedom to become leaders in their own right and under that banner of your name the whole time. And so you guys chose Basecamp Trading, and you have two of your high-level traders, Dave and Thomas, right? They have that ability to be the experts in those respective spaces, futures and options, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I've had arguments with some of of my industry peers, if you will, that have maybe been in the space longer than I have. They're very, very vocal on, building a business with your name on it. And, I'm somewhat contrarian, and I do things differently. And we're kind of the outliers, and, we've set different trends in our industry because we're willing to do things differently than most people do. And I think that, quite frankly, my personal opinion on that is that you can do really well putting your name on it, and that's great. But I don't have that kind of ego. I really don't. To me, I don't have the insecurity of letting a trader, grow a substantial following under our brand. I think it's fantastic, and I actually look at what those people in my industry peers do, and how much the business revolves around them, and they have so many limitations by doing that way. that, in my opinion, they're literally handcuffing themselves from growth, and they could grow a lot bigger and larger. And because I have an abundant mindset, I don't mind saying that on this podcast, because they hear it, great, maybe they'll learn something. And I really do want my competitors to succeed. I'm not closed-minded to the point where I just want to crush the competition. I actually like healthy competition. I definitely don't have a problem at all. I really like the way that I've built this business, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah. If you had to boil it down from your experiences to date, like what would be, and you just said, you know what, here are 2 or 3 operating principles that that I have as a business owner and a leader, that have really helped me get to where I am today. And when you think of a principle, you can kind of think of, a decision-making criteria that you use, or you can think of a principle as what you just said about, hey, I have a principle of not being the ego in the room and empowering others. And so I'm extracting these things, but other than maybe you can reiterate some of the things we just talked about, or you could say something that we haven't talked about yet. But what are some of those principles, those decision-making criteria that you feel like fairly unique to you has kind of helped you grow this business?
That's a really good question. I'm sure I may come back to this later after you've asked it, and there's a possibility I would answer it differently. But I would say number one of the guiding principles, behind all this is that we truly do want to make a difference for our clients. All of the decisions that we make are designed to help our clients succeed in the markets. Now, we can't guarantee them success. No one can do that. But because we are client focused, that drives a lot. We really do have that desire to help. And so that's kind of the number one guiding principle. The second thing that I would say is we are innovative and willing to do different things. And I think that gives us a substantial competitive edge, that we're willing to go out there and do things that some of our industry peers would look at and say, what in the world are they doing? But I've noticed that as we've done those, the trends then follow from them copying us. And I love that when that happens, because it tells me that I'm a step ahead of my competitors. And so we are innovative, and we kind of wear a little bit of that chip on our shoulder to a degree, not from a prideful standpoint, but more so from a motivational standpoint, because we believe that in this space you have to be innovative. And then the third thing, one thing that we're constantly doing is trying to simplify. Trading is a very complicated endeavor. I don't know if anyone listening to this has ever traded or tried to trade, but it can be very complicated. It can be extremely rewarding, and also you lose a lot of money, but it's a challenge. And so if we can find a way to constantly simplify what we are doing to help our clients make less decisions, but make better decisions, then we're winning. And so, but that's not just for like the client facing side, it's also in the way that we run the business. We're always looking for ways to boil it down to the simplest possible solution.
Yeah.
I hate complexity for the sake of complexity. It's, for me, the more we focused on simplification, the more we've scaled. And one of the coaches that I do work with, he used to tell me all the time, you have to simplify to multiply. And I just recently was on the phone with him again, and he said, hey, it's not just that you have to simplify to multiply. He's like, you want to simplify, and then you want to amplify the impact. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think you probably, if there is a fourth principle, maybe you just touched on it through analogy, but if there's an edge that just Drew Day has, it's got to be you're a student of the game. I mean, you just gave like 5 examples of where you learned an idea from that wasn't your own, because you're just constantly studying everything. And I mean, I'm a coach, and you push me. I mean, I remember talking to you and you were like, dude, have you not read, Russell Brunson yet? And I'm like, what? Yeah, no. because you're always surrounding yourself in something you don't understand. You have no qualms about going to someone and asking for help and getting new thinking, and then you act on it, which is something that crudely, there are definitely people out there that mentally masturbate to self-help and business etiquette and ideas. But they never act on it. They're just like, ooh, I'm always going to the next conference, right? You put these things into motion, and it's really impressive how it grows as a result of that. So because of you are such a avid reader and studier, I want you to answer this, like 3 books that you would recommend, whether it's someone that's in the business ownership kind of space, since that's probably our vast audience that we're working with, or it doesn't have to be a business book at all. It could be totally unrelated, but just 3 books that you would recommend.
Well, that's a really good question. And when I was thinking about, what are the best books? Because I'm reading books all the time. I used to think that to be a great business owner and leader in a business that I had to read business books. But the truth is, I think what makes a great mind and makes you a better leader is that your mind's like a garden, and unless you're in there like growing it and thinking about things and reading every day, then you're not going to be that. And so I started to have a shift a few years ago with that, and started thinking, well, personal development really is huge. So I'd say, this is going to change for me over the years because I read so much. But right now, I'd say the top 3 recommendations that I would have. There's a book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen.
Yeah,
that's a classic. It's fantastic. There's a book by, and speaking of simplification, this is one of the greatest books that I've read over the last decade. It's by Craig McGowan, called Essentialism.
Oh yeah.
And it's a great business book. And then the most recent book that I would definitely put up there is a must is the book called The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. It's fantastic.
Okay. Can you give us the 30-second version on what that book, in like principally based, what makes it great, or why you like that one?
Well, so if you're not familiar with Naval Ravikant, he's a serial investor. I think he was in Uber and LinkedIn and different things like that. He's invested in over 200, private equity companies. And the book is basically, his advice on not just business, but life. And it's very, very good because he talks through things at such a deep level, but such a practical level. It really, really spoke to me when I started reading it. I couldn't put the book down. And so he goes through all the different, the evolution that he went through, going through, becoming an investor. And I think it's a must read for any business owner, any leader really, in an organization.
Yeah.
He doesn't just talk about business. He talks about here's other things that you need to do. And he's very balanced. And I find that really refreshing in today's world, that here is someone that's extremely successful, but I feel like his motivations behind what he's doing isn't just about money. And I think that's very important in today's world, because if you're focused on your business just because you want to make more money, that's not fulfilling. And so I really respect his work, and I respect his view on just, almost everything in that book.
Yeah, that's great. I remember as soon as you said that, hearing Tim Ferriss interview him on his podcast, and how he talks about how he doesn't actually wake up early in the morning. He's, like you said, there's more balance in his life. Sure. And it was a great interview. So that's a great recommendation. Hey, this has been great. I know we have, call it 60 seconds left, so you can kind of make this a humorous punchline on it. But with all the market craziness going on, Drew, with GameStop and everything else, if you have some amateur day trade investors, and you only could squeeze in one piece of 30-second advice, what would be that advice to your?
Well, everyone's looking at this this GameStop, AMC stuff, and the Wall Street bet stuff right now. It's kind of the hot dot to kind of chase. And my trainer at the gym, got into this, and I trained with him early in the morning. He walks in and he says, "I don't know how you do what you do. This is just crazy." He bought in, it went up, it went down, and he couldn't put his phone down. And he was like, "I don't know what to do." And I looked at it, and I saw the short squeeze, forming. And if you're not familiar with what that is, basically it's when you have a bunch of short sellers that are selling the stock, and they've got to cover their positions because they're going against them. And when they go to buy, they push the market higher before a dip. And so that's what happened in GameStop. And so this was January 29th, and I'm having this conversation with my trainer, and I said I would probably buy puts on that. And if you look at the price of GME GameStop now, you would have made a lot of money by buying puts on GameStop, even though it had been restricted to trading. The outright equity, you could have still bought some puts, on that. And so I think the implied volatility on that stock is so crazy right now. There's a lot of market manipulation, and there's lots of interest in it. I can only give general advice because of the nature of what I do, but I'd probably, if I bought it, I'd probably just hold it. If I hadn't participated in it, I'd stay away from it.
Yeah.
So that'd be my little bit of information.
And my last bit would be go to Basecamp Trading to learn more about how you can become a better day trader in general, and learn from some of these masters like Drew and Dave and Thomas. They have an incredible system of training and coaching, and some incredible results, and some really great case studies to back it up. So there's your shout out. And I'll put in the notes and kind of a recap segment, a little bit more of where you can find more information on Drew, the company, the program, and if you're interested, where you can go to learn more. So Drew, thanks so much, man, for squeezing this into your schedule and taking this time. I think this was a great interview. It was a lot of fun.
Well, thanks, Adam. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. See you, buddy.